All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Anthony Mantha is a Detroit Red Wing, 4 years at $5.7 million. That's the AAV. This is a fantastic number for the Detroit Red Wings for two reasons. And one will go into what could have been a projected number for Anthony Mantha and the numbers that have been thrown about for, as we discussed with Tyler Bertuzzi before, was a lot higher than the number we're seeing now. So we were seeing numbers that were maybe, if you just want to say they were the higher fives, but definitely numbers jumping into the sixes. And again, like I mentioned before, people that have more time to spend on this, way smarter than I am, have come up with numbers at the 6.25 million range. So for Steve Yzerman to lock in Anthony Mantha through the prime of his career at 5.7 million is incredible. I think this is something that when you just strictly look at what his potential is, if he could actually make it through an entire season and getting close to 70 points, and to think we're playing a first line forward, 5.7 million to produce at a level, again, at 82 games is going to be $5.7 million, or would be 70 points for 82 games is absolutely fantastic. Now, first thing that comes to mind is 5.7 million is not a cheap number, but I mean, we could take a quick look here at what's going on with the Detroit Red Wings if we go on over to capfriendly.com. And the important thing to keep in mind here is this is still a flexible contract. We've talked about flexibility ad nauseum here on Red Wings Rant, but it's to that point that you want to make sure you have room when it's time to sign your core players. Now, Anthony Mantha is a core player right now. But if it turns out he's not a part of the core to go win a Stanley Cup, in, like we've said from the very beginning with the show, was 4 to 5 years we were looking at turning everything around. Now it's 3 to 4 years. Anthony Mantha would now be done with this team at that 4-year period. Once we're ready to say this is now that Stanley Cup contender. And Anthony Mantha, you know what? If he earns it, if he's going to stick around and be a piece of the core and be a strong top 6 forward in our right wing, you pay him at that point. Absolutely. But we have seen a lot of issues with injuries. I would say that would be the main issue. And of course, you know, what does a guy do? What is he able to put up numbers-wise when he's in the situation of being on, let's just say it, the worst team in the NHL? So all that being put together, you're still looking, as you can see on the screen here, at a guy who isn't going to eclipse Dylan Larkin's number. It's always funny to go right ahead and compare him. Compare the player you're getting in Anthony Mantha at the age and what Franz Nielsen's getting paid right now. I'm only saying that because it's on our screen right now, but good gravy. And of course, this does make Anthony Mantha the second highest paid player on the team. He is tied with Mark Stahl, but that's a totally different conversation for another day. But very good to see what's going on here. I couldn't be more excited, and there were ways that this could have gone worse. You go out 5-6 years with Anthony Mantha. If you eclipse the $6 million number, I don't think that would have been too bad as long as you stuck around in this term. And that's where I think we can be happy, because legitimately we have another lottery pick coming up. And if that guy is ready to go and we go the 3 years of restricted free agency, boom, you're going to have room at that point to sign that guy, because you got to keep in mind, Mort Seider's going to need contracts. Filip Hronek's got some pay raises coming in there. Dylan Larkin's probably going to need a pay raise, and whoever's coming on this team, including Lucas Raymond, getting an eventual pay raise, and whatever's going on this draft, possibly even the next one, if it's Shane Wright coming in, you got to have that space. You got to have that flexibility, and that's what this contract does. It actually puts you right in that realm where you're making the decision on Anthony Mantha, and with maybe some more sure things, or at least with more darts being thrown at the board, you'll have a better idea where those dollars are going to. Because don't forget, this still puts the Red Wings in a position with so much space, where Cap Friendly says the current cap space is $12 million. Of course, we still have Timashov that needs to be signed, but he's going to barely make a dent in those numbers. So let's keep cracking. I like doing it this way, where I'm just going to keep chatting at you, and I'm going to bring up some more things to share, because number one, I got to get this done before my beautiful baby girl wakes up. And number two, I can just keep chatting all day. And some of you might be sick of it already, but we're jumping in. We're in there now. All right. I've got, similarly to what we did with Tyler Bertuzzi, I just went through and built out a model to show some comparable numbers for comparable players in the NHL, including some salary numbers. And I've also improved upon that model, had more time to take a look. And, one of these days I'm going to share it so you guys can all have access to this. But let's just take a quick look. And I want to let you know from the get-go, this all started by looking at and picking out players with comparable points per 60 and individual expected goals per 60. And this is where I start talking about the improvements on that model, where before I was looking at just individual expected goals, which when I started to look at Anthony Mantha just didn't make sense, because this is a guy who can't make it through a season. So we need to go back, take a look at what those expected goals numbers are from an individual aspect per 60. And again, the points per 60 is important here too, to make sure we're looking at players that maybe will finish to the same level that Anthony Mantha does, because his points per 60, this 2.81, including what's going on in the entire NHL, puts him in the top 30. This number, when you're taking a look at this is incredible. And this was from Evolving Hockey that I pulled these numbers. And I'm just gonna keep chatting here, but I want to take a quick look and make sure you guys are seeing the same thing I am. But yeah, he'd be in the top 30 in the NHL, and that's incredible to finally, like, to take a peek at that and say, gosh darn, would it be great if this guy could get an entire season in. But again, I could just say that, and then we have to tell ourselves, oh my gosh, $5.7 million for a top 30 guy in the NHL for points per 60. But we're just going to keep on rolling here, because I want you guys to see what else we have calculated. So that's how these players were put together. What you can see moving down the line here is our games played, points per game, time on ice, and points per 60 from a career perspective. So this is where, again, I bring up the improvements to this model. We decided to give more weight to the last couple of seasons. So you can see a weighted points per 60. So what's going on behind the scenes on this Excel spreadsheet is giving more weight to the most recent season, so that we can see something that is a little more likely to turn out for these players. So we could still take the full breadth of their career. And if somebody had some great years at the start, maybe that's why they got paid, which is a reason to take this into consideration. And maybe they've slowed down a little bit. We still want to say this is where this production could be for this player in particular. So where we're comparing these contracts, and we want to say if Steve Yzerman's getting value and why to put more weight on these more recent years, it's just where that production's going to be, because we're not comparing necessarily, is this contract, at the dates that these guys sign their contracts, is it better on that day? I think it's more important to say, here's what we're going to project is going to happen for Anthony Mantha, and then this is where that value is going to play out, because we aren't talking about strictly how great is this contract today. We are talking about how great this contract is going to look when Anthony Mantha is 30 years old. So if we keep on rolling here, and we come down to the end where it says weighted projected points, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's where those projected points for an entire season. You have Anthony Mantha at 62, TJ Oshie at 54, Filip Forsberg 62, Brendan Gallagher 58.99, Hornqvist. You can look down the line. We start to pull up Teravainen, Blake Wheeler, Jakub Voracek, and Mike Hoffman here, and they're actually scoring at a much higher rate than Anthony Mantha, and they're pulling in more dollars to do so. But this is where the conversation needs to go from there, because you can see more points coming in. But if I can scroll down a little bit here, and I want to make sure that you guys can all see the same thing, is our dollar per point, our projected dollar per point, and our weighted projected dollar per point. So the average for those numbers, Anthony Mantha is going to come in underneath for all of those numbers there. And why that is so important is because you could say this is the average spot for the amount a team should pay per point for these comparable players. And I'll be honest here too. I did have more comparable players on here based on the model of individual expected goals and points per 60. But some of those guys I took off because I just can't have Mark Stone blowing out these numbers. And believe it or not, I had John Tavares on here too, and you don't want his numbers blowing this out of the water either. So this really could have looked a lot worse based on me pulling individual expected goals and per 60 and points per 60 to bring up these comparable players. But I'm making it more reasonable. Okay. So I also pulled out a number that was pretty low too, which was Bjorkstrand. You're just at that different point in his career where you can't really compare a number, because that was basically you're talking about Anthony Mantha's previous contract. So that gives you, there's a full, circle story of what's going on with this model. But this is where it's important. I'm going to take you all the way down to the last bar in the weighted projected dollar per point on these comparable players. And you have an average of 100,000. And this is from the weighted projected points, which again, we're giving more emphasis to the more recent seasons for these players to say where their projected point total is going to be. How much does a team pay on average for these wingers? And it's 100,845 and 67 cents per point. Now, this is not points that are going into the standings. These are points that are going to their statistics. So we have to keep this on an individual aspect because, shoot, you've got point share that's out there we could have compared, but that does give a little more weight to the teams that are more successful. So we're sticking with the individual statistics, but it's plain as you can see. I mean, this is a $10,000 difference between what Anthony Mantha is getting paid and what the production value is going to be, and what that average number would look like. You've got lower numbers in there. Right now, Teuvo Teravainen is at 83,000. Mike Hoffman, who doesn't have a contract yet, but if we can base it off his previous number, which is where that's coming in, you can see that his value is off the charts. But sticking with Anthony Mantha and looking at these average numbers, I mean, there's just so much to be had here. There's so much to like about this contract, especially from this perspective. And even if we move backwards and just look at the dollar per point, and we look at what was going on from what has already been produced, Mantha's already doing good from the perspective of the average number and comparing it moving down. And then that other projected dollar per point where you take into consideration that entire career and doesn't give the weight to the most recent season. Anthony Mantha, compared to the average, he's getting pretty close. He's definitely sniffing that average number, but that's where you do have to give more weight to what's been going on in Mantha's career, because you learn more about the game, right? You need to give you need to take that into consideration when that's going on. So I like to think, again, to wrap up this whole conversation, that this should help show why this is another great contract for Steve Yzerman. Now, is that a perfect model? No, I'm going to keep working on it and tweaking it. But I think from the aspect that this contract was signed like an hour ago and we threw all this together, that just gives you an idea of what can be put together. Taking all those comparable players, looking at, and again, me taking a lot of huge numbers out of those comparable players. But this is the simplest way to put it. Like, Steve Yzerman did another great job. It continues to be flexible for the Detroit Red Wings. It continues to be flexible for the likes of Lucas Raymond. Those guys we're going to be drafting this year and next year. Moritz Seider. There's more room for these guys who are potential long-term core players. And there's still the opportunity to keep Mantha. Now, we talked about in the last videos that Tyler Bertuzzi may have gotten not the greatest shake in regards to what his contract could have been based on what other guys are getting paid at his production level. Yzerman got tremendous value out of that. Now, this was not at that level. The Mantha contract is a little bit closer to what you would expect him to get paid. Again, we were talking about projection-wise, and I could bring up Prashant Iyer, who's a guy I highly respect, and brought up the likes of Thomas Tatar's contract. And you know what? If I can, what Prashant was talking about was what that percentage of the contract that Thomas Tatar was taking and just placing that number on top of Anthony Mantha. And I think I could easily sit here and say I would take Anthony Mantha right now over Thomas Tatar in his prime any day of the week. But here it is. Prashant saying in my nightly harassment of Max Boltman, he threw out the AAV similar to what Thomas Tatar got, 7.07, which would have put him at 6.25. So where before we were talking about these numbers in 5 millions and Tyler Bertuzzi getting paid 3.5, it's not that huge of a difference to go 6.25 down to 5.7. Obviously, we can just look at those numbers and see that that's a fact. But it's still a win, I think, with that number being the case. Like, it's still a win for Detroit. We didn't see a huge number coming back to bite us. We didn't see something where it's like, well, I guess Anthony Mantha is a part of the Stanley Cup winning core. And you know, I just to continue using Prashant as an example, I know over the season he's been asked, you know, is Anthony Mantha a part of this core? And it always depends and this was his answer, that how long do you see this timetable being? And here at Red Wings Rant, we've been pretty, you know, we've had a firm foot in the ground to say 4 to 5 years last season. So we have upgraded now to 3 to 4 years. And, you know, we have that flexibility. That 3 to 4 years puts Mantha, he's going to have to earn that next contract, which could be amazing for the Red Wings if you think about it. I mean, a couple of lottery picks coming in, the defense starting to take shape, and now you've got Anthony Mantha rolling in that contract year. Oh my gosh, could that be amazing? You want to get a couple of guys hitting contract years at the same time to see if that production value kicks up. But you could have a few contracts hitting that point in that year, and that could be that winning formula to get us back, back into winning form. And again, let's say we don't have a great season that year, but Mantha's still kicking it up. Amazing trade value for that 4th year. So many things to think about. I mean, we're 4 years out now. We just signed the contract, but I hope you feel the excitement that I'm feeling. I hope you see the value that Yzerman's getting here, and the flexibility. I can't say it enough. Is incredible. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for watching, and check us out on Mondays. We will be going twice a week once the season really starts rolling. But check us out on Mondays here on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel. You're not going to miss a thing. I hope this on-the-spot analytics coverage did something for you. We also do pro wrestling coverage as the Brothers of Discussion that goes live every Thursday, if you guys want to check that out as well. Thank you. This is very exciting news. Good to see Anthony Mantha is going to stick around with the Detroit Red Wings. And thank you for checking out Red Wings Rant. And, of course, we're brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network as well. Thanks, everybody.